And welcome back to Face the Nation. Our panel today, Ruth Marcus, a columnist with the Washington Post, Gerald Seib, the Washington bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal, Dana Milbank, also a columnist for the Washington Post, and Jeffrey Goldberg is with the Atlantic and Bloomberg View. And Jeffrey, I'm going to start with you. You are the one that some official in the United States government told that Prime Minister Netanyahu was a chicken blank. Okay,
yes,
I asked him about
blank,
that.
Yes.
You heard the Prime Minister. He said relations are better than ever with the United States. Number one, if you'd care to reveal who told you that, we'd be happy to listen this morning. And also, I'd like just to get your take on U.S. and Israeli relations right now.
I'll decline your first offer.
I think that's very chicken blank of you.
Well, it is, but it's appropriate. And on the second point, let's separate out two issues. Relations between Israel and the United States remain strong. The defense relationship, the intelligence relationship, the people to people, if you will. The relationship between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel has never been worse. We go back to the Eisenhower period to look for a more tense.
What's the deal?
Time. The deal is that they're very, very different men with very, very different ideological viewpoints, and this administration here believes that Netanyahu is, how shall I put this in a more diplomatic way, and it's a general feeling that he doesn't take risks for peace, that he doesn't do what he needs to do to solve the Middle East crisis. For his part, Netanyahu believes that this administration doesn't understand the Middle East. I mean, it's as simple as that. You know, one it leans liberal, the other leans conservative. Their dispositions are different, and so they have a very dysfunctional relationship. And it's going to be very interesting and tense to watch as they move to these Iran talks, how it's going to go.
Gerald Seib, we saw this hideous video this morning, and this is the worst of the worst. This seems to me that the war on terrorism is a long way from being over. You heard Mitt Romney say we should keep on the table the idea of putting American troops back into Iraq. Is this administration, where do you think they are?
Well, you know, it's interesting because President Obama, talking today before he left Asia to come back home after the G20 meeting, actually left the door open a little crack, at least, on that question of U.S. troops on the ground. There are going to be more U.S. troops on the ground anyway. More advisors are going. But, you know, I think the key here is that this is a long struggle. We're not losing the war against ISIS, but we're not winning it. And we, as a kind of an amorphous group, it's the U.S., it's Iraq, it's the Free Syrian Army, which is in real trouble up in Syria, it's the moderate Arab states, it's the Saudis. That whole collection is not winning this war, and it's going to take a while to turn it around, and it's going to be ugly along the way.
One of the Kurdish officials is saying this morning that there may be 200,000 of these ISIS people. Now that seems pretty high to me.
That's very high. You know, the truth is, what we don't know about ISIS exceeds what we do know. The numbers that seem to be most reasonable, somewhere in the 18,000 to 30,000 range. But again, they're drawing people, and the longer it seems that we can't stop them, the more attractive they'll be to radicals from around the world.
And you know, one thing that's really interesting and horrifying about this terrible video is that ISIS is its own worst enemy. I think you have seen the administration, General Dempsey last week, increasingly open the door not just to more troops, but to the possibility of getting increasingly involved in combat things. And we saw this in the past when ISIS engages in brutalities like this and videotapes them and puts them out for the American public to see. It riles up the American public, and it makes it easier, for better or for worse, for the president and the military to do what it needs to take to deal with ISIS.
Dana, I want to, let me shift here just to this immigration situation. Obviously, we're heading to some kind of a showdown up on Capitol Hill. The president saying he's going to take unilateral action that would protect millions of illegal immigrants in this country from being deported. Congress is saying don't do it. You heard what both sides were saying. Where do you see this going? Do you think there's any possibility, because some on the right are actually talking about maybe it'll come to shutting down the government again, and maybe we'll have to do that.
Well, I love this notion that everybody's floating that it'll poison the well, as if everybody's been drinking pure water up there and it's not already full of arsenic and PCBs already. So the well is poisoned. The president has no choice. He made this promise. He probably should have done it earlier on. And the truth is, he has an incentive to do it now because he wants to provoke a fight. If you saw the way he's come out, he's all about fighting this new Republican majority. He'd love to lure them into that shutdown, maybe even some impeachment proceedings, maybe another lawsuit to draw those distinctions. He won the shutdown fight over Obamacare, and the exit polls were lopsided in favor of legalizing the illegal immigrants. So that's a fight he wants.
This may be Burr Rabbit, you know, don't throw me into that old briar patch. I mean, we remember that.
Everything about his news conference was saying, it's not my fault, no mistake here, and I'm going to go right back at it with climate change, with immigration, with minimum wage, all the things they don't want to have.
This has definitely been a let's go back at it week or few weeks since the election. Really interesting on a number of fronts. Climate change, threatening a veto on the Keystone XL pipeline, going out definitely with the net roots on internet neutrality. And I totally agree with Dana. There's no way he can back down on fulfilling this immigration promise. I think that it's clear also from the Republican point of view that the grown-ups in the party, the leadership in the party, do not want to shut down, but to go with the bull metaphor and the flag, this is definitely waving a red flag, and the question is whether they can control the bull, because even though nobody rational wants a shutdown, it may be hard to avoid it.
Well, there's one issue, though, in which I think the president is showing he may be prepared to challenge the left, and that is free trade.
Exactly.
That's a big one, and he talked about that a lot in Asia as well, and that is not popular on the left. I think that's a real litmus test for him. Is he going to go big just on things Republicans don't like, or go big on things that define the Obama agenda, not somebody else's agenda?
Well, let me tell you something. If you needed an example that everybody's on edge up there on Capitol Hill, we got it this week during Nancy Pelosi, the House leader for Democrats, when she had a news conference. And our Nancy Cordes asked her if she, since they have lost the majority in 2 straight elections, if she was thinking about giving up her leadership post. And, well, let me just show you what she said.
I was never on the front of Time magazine, even though I was the first woman to be. Wasn't that a curiosity that the Republicans win? Boehner's on the front of Time magazine. Mitch McConnell wins, he's on the front of Time magazine. Isn't there a pattern here? Now, as I said, who I am does not depend on any of that, with all due respect to all of you. But as a woman, it's like, is there a message here? Is there something that we're missing?
May I say, as a woman?
As a woman.
Oh, please. It's not as if Nancy Pelosi, when she became the first woman Speaker of the House, did not get a ton of attention, including from yours truly. So I think, with all due respect to the former Speaker, playing the gender card here, not a great idea, but illustrative of the really tough feelings. It's not a lot of fun these days to be a Democrat in the House.
A great week for Time magazine. Didn't know that it was still
a nice cover.
Didn't know that it was still, the cover still mattered as much.
Well, what about this, Dana? I mean, she is a terrific fundraiser for Democrats. Is it her fault that they lost the majority 2 times in a row?
Well, it's not her fault per se, but you know, the only question now is it the worst standing for House Democrats since 1946 or 1928? And when you're the leader of a party that's been brought to that point, you got to say, well, maybe you need some fresh faces. And the top 3 leaders are, you know, people can do very well in their 70s, but they're 74, 75.
Nice knowing you here, Dana.
And 74. Maybe they need to bring in a little fresh blood at a higher level. You've seen none of that in the House, and very little of it in the Senate, a little bit with Elizabeth Warren, but no indication that I see that either side is getting ready to cut some deals or do anything. But
we just had Claire McCaskill here who voted against bringing Harry Reid back, and I think we know of 6 votes, 6 senators, but those votes are in secret, so there may actually have been more. But what about, Jerry, this idea bringing Elizabeth Warren into the leadership? She's a firebrand. She's fun to interview, but she is from the left. Is that going to give the right impression to people out there about the Democratic Party that they're moving to the left as Republicans are moving to the right?
Well, I think she had to be taken into account. She's a force, and she represents a force. But the other thing that's happening, and you had Senator Claire McCaskill, who's from the other part of the party, the moderate part of the party, and she said, I'm part of the moderate middle in the Senate where we'd like to get some things done. The problem is that moderate middle just got wiped out, or not wiped out, at least got diluted a lot. I mean, you had Senator Pryor and Senator Hagan in North Carolina, Senator Udall. They all lost. So there's not as much in the middle left. So the left is right in saying, hey, we deserve some representation.
I was struck how quickly she mentioned Senator Tester is also coming into leadership, the flat top farmer or whatever the expression was, as almost to neutralize whatever signal Elizabeth Warren is sending, which doesn't seem like an effective messaging. You're messaging we're still sort of the same mix of what we were.
The Democratic Party isn't really clear what it wants to be right now. It's clear that it doesn't want to be a minority party, but it's not clear how that's going to be solved.
It's not entirely clear, by the way.
And I think that it's going to need to actually take a, say, presidential election with a certain candidate to come to really have that debate fleshed out.
Harry Reid is not about to change his stripes. He's an old cop. He's an old boxer. He punched his future father-in-law. He once tried to strangle a guy who tried to offer him a bribe. He's not going to be backing down and cutting deals here, particularly, as Jerry pointed out, that the moderates are gone. He's going to be slugging it out for the next 2 years.
Let me just go around the table, just a quick answer from all. Who thinks Mitt Romney's going to run for president again?
We were talking about that before. I think he likes being on TV. That doesn't necessarily suggest that he's going to run for president. I'd find it hard to believe that he does.
Dana?
I think he would like to be president but not run for it, and he is not on this list of 32 possible candidates the Republican Party put out this week.
He's available to be drafted to run for president. I don't think he's going to run for president.
I'm going to go out on a little bit more of a limb. What's he doing up so early on Sunday morning? And I have to say, a lot of the points that he's making and that he made in the last campaign are looking pretty good in retrospect.
I think that if Jeb Bush does not decide to run, he will give it very serious thought. And I think that's probably where it is right now, at least from my sources. We'll be back in a moment with my interview of Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. Thank you all very much.